Bismillah Rahman Rahim. Hello everyone, I am Faraz Naqvi, currently leading the Iran program at Institute of Regional Studies Islamabad. On the behalf of Institute, I welcome you all on this event, which is on having discussion on bilateral relations between Pakistan and Iran, specifically after the January 6 border clashes between the two. As you all might have known that on January 16th, of this year, Iran conducted air strikes and drone strikes inside the territory of Pakistan. According to them, they have claimed that they have targeted the militants who have been conducting terrorist attacks inside the Iranian territory. However, the Pakistan's official position is that those strikes ones inside the Iranian territory. However, after this recent escalation, we have also ambassadors of both the states have returned to their official postings, and the Iranian foreign minister have also visited Pakistan and have officials. According to this scenario, this event is quite important because such strikes by Iran was taken as a surprise by everyone because the official communication channels were on, and this is very extraordinary in the bilateral relations of both the states, as such things have never happened before at this much level. Though the strategic choices of both Pakistan and Iran have been quite different, specifically after the Iranian Revolution in 1979, but more or less the bilateral relations have remained quite cordial at times, and it was also at the positive trajectory at the time this attack happened. Just to take in view, we have invited two eminent speakers to have discussion on this very pertinent issue and enlighten us about this whole episode and the consequences on not only strategic level but also political and diplomatic level. For that, I would like to welcome our two guests, Ambassador Riffat Masood, who was the former ambassador of Pakistan to Islamic Republic of Iran, and also Syed Muhammad Ali, who is the strategic and security expert at national and international level. On the behalf of the Institute, I welcome both of you. Starting with Ambassador Rifat, ma'am, can you just enlighten us about this whole episode and how far it was consequential for the diplomatic relations between the two?
Ji, Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and thank you very much, Faraz, for organizing this very important webinar on this subject. Actually, I'd just like to remind us all that, as you have very rightly pointed out, that this relationship between Iran and Pakistan has generally been a cordial one. We have enjoyed good relations. We are friendly countries. There have been some issues between us, and those issues are mostly related to the porous and unstable border that exists between the two countries. And I would just like to highlight, as you have already said in your intro, that the border between the two countries became even more unstable after the 1979 revolution. If you would recall, going back as far back as 1985, when it was General Ziaul Haq was in Pakistan, ruling Pakistan, there was an incident in Karachi in which members of the IGRC, the Revolutionary Guard, the Pasandaran-e-Inqilab, as they are known, or the Revolutionary Guards, they actually managed to get into Karachi, and they attacked, in fact, killed a few members of the Mujahideen-e-Khalq. The Mujahideen-e-Khalq were those Iranians who were against the revolution, and they were sort of working from third countries to try to bring about a collapse in the revolution. And that, of course, it was early days of the revolution at that time. So as far back as 1985, we have had these incidents. But just to point out, as you have already said, even when this happened in 1985, and it was in Karachi, General Ziaul Haq at that time was informed. And of course, he said, no, we will not take any military action. We will not take any strong or harsh reaction against Iran, because Iran is a friendly country. Iran is a neighbor. It's a Muslim country. And of course, at that time, as well as now, it never suited Pakistan to open up another front, because don't forget that 1979 was also the time when the Soviet occupation of Afghanistan had taken place. So we had a front on our northwestern border. We have always had an open front on our eastern border. So at that time, it was felt, and as it is felt now, that we should not open up another front, and we should just diplomatically and politically resolve this issue, and call upon the Iranians that, this kind of thing has happened, and we should not let it happen again. And since then, it has been, unfortunately for us, this border has remained unstable. We have had several instances, and I don't want to go into all of them, but 2010, 2011, 12, 13, 15, 18, 19. I mean, all the time, this organization, which the Iranians, the Jaish al-Adl, they say that they are actually working to undermine Iranian revolution and the regime, and they are funded by the West, and especially by Israel. And at the same time, we have been saying to the Iranians that, look, in your province of Sistan, Balochistan, especially in the Saravan region, which is basically the hotbed where most of this terrorist activity takes place, you have given refuge, or people of Baloch origin who have left Pakistan, who are working to undermine Pakistan's security and authority, are living in Iran, and they are carrying out attacks against us. The Iranians say that you have people from Iran working against our regime. So this kind of thing has been happening for many, many years. But as I said earlier, it was never to this extent. Never, ever have we had a situation, at least I don't recall, maybe I'm wrong, when a missile or a drone strike took place from the Iranian side, or a corresponding one from our side. We were almost, I was quite shocked when this incident happened. And I couldn't understand why the Iranians would do something like this, because there are existing border mechanisms, because this border is so unstable, and because it is in the interest of both our countries to have a stable and prosperous border so that trade can take place and people can come and go freely. It was surprising, it was shocking that, it should all of a sudden become a hotbed. And Iranians are sending missiles, and we are sending missiles. And so it was quite a shocking thing, and it's never happened before. Because whenever there's been instability on the border, there are mechanisms that are in place, conversations take place, hotlines have been established, there are regular meetings between the two border security forces to, in fact, highlight that, this is what we have, this is the information we have. And what normally would happen is that if it was on our side, our security forces would take action against those people who are working to undermine Iranian sovereignty. And if it was on the Iranian side, we would share the information with the Iranians, and they would take action against those people who are working. So, it had been working like this, and even joint operations in 2022, if you would recall, there was a system in which joint operations could also be taken place between. So it was always a very collaborative kind of a mechanism. And it was therefore very, very surprising that, especially now, when you have the Middle East up in flames, when you have Gaza up in flames, and when you have the Hamas and the Houthis and the Hezbollah attacking Israel, why would Iran want to open up a front on its western border, on a border with a country with which it has no grief, with which it has no problem? So therefore, the big question was, and remains, I think, in many people's mind, is why would Iran do something like that? I have an inkling, I have a couple of things in my mind which I would like to share with you. First of all, you see, the Iranian regime is still relatively, although it claims to be stable, but there is instability. It is not as popular as the establishment of the authorities would like to consider that it is. As you know, there is unrest inside Iran. The economic situation inside Iran is very, very grave. Sanctions have had a very, very a negative impact on the population. Their rupee, their real is Tuman is devalued extensively. There is unemployment, there's inflation, and the youth in Iran are very, very frustrated because of the economic situation. So there's unrest within Iran. Secondly, the IRGC, which is the Revolutionary Guard, or the Pasandaran as they are known in Iran, they are responsible. In fact, their responsibility is to protect the regime, number one, and secondly, to protect the borders of Iran, because the feeling is that the regime is being threatened from external forces, and the Pasandaran are the ones to protect that. Now, because of this responsibility that they've been given, they have assumed a great many powers. And not only have they assumed a lot of powers, but they have a very close relationship with the Rehber himself. They have his ear. So he, in fact, listens to their advice more than to the advice of the other state machinery, such as the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Ministry of Defense, and so forth. Because the Pasandaran, the IRGC, are in fact his people, as it were, and it is their job. So whenever they give a kind of an indication to the Rehber that we should carry out this operation, he agrees with them. In fact, don't forget that they are also responsible for any kind of assistance that is being given to Hamas against Israel, because they have an Al-Quds force within the IRGC, which is also aimed at protecting the rights of the Palestinians. Now, they have, because of the fact that they have assumed this huge role, and they are a larger than life kind of military organization, power does corrupt at times, and absolute power corrupts, and they have this sense within them that they are the actual real protectors of Iran, and not nobody else. Now, that has led to, so when in November 2023, if you recall, when General Soleimani was assassinated in Iraq, this was a huge blow to the IRGC. And if you would recall that soon after that assassination, Iranians did another very odd and ununderstandable, unbelievable thing by shooting down a Ukrainian passenger plane. It was felt as if this was like the IRGC was like taking a revenge, but they misfired, they miscalculated, and a passenger plane was shot down by the Iranians. This was soon after General Soleimani's assassination. Now, this particular incident that happened in January, it followed an incident which took place in Iran, in Kerman, where you remember, Kerman is, of course, the hometown of General Soleimani, when his anniversary was taking place, and there was a terrorist attack there. And the Iranians responded, the IRGC responded by attacking Iraq, by attacking Syria. And I have a feeling that they made a huge, huge blunder, a huge miscalculation by also attacking Pakistan. I think they came into, although Iranians are very, as I've always found them to be very rational and very pragmatic people, but as I said, when it comes to the IRGC and when it comes to their own stakes and when it comes to their own preservation, sometimes they can do things which are not understandable, such as when they shot down that passenger plane. They also had a missile attack against Pakistan. Syria and Iraq, they claim it was because the attack originated, there was the Israeli Mossad activists in Syria, and in Iraq, there was activists there who were undermining Iranian authority. And the Kerman attack, they were blaming on some Tajik organization, which perhaps has its roots not in even Pakistan. It has them, I think, in Afghanistan or somewhere else. So it was unbelievable that they should attack Pakistan. But I think it was like a total miscalculation on their part. They overplayed their game. They as we say in English, they bit more than they can chew. I think there was a sense of desperation, a sense of frustration, because don't forget, at Davos, the political leadership were having a cordial meeting. The foreign minister was meeting our prime minister. Our foreign minister was having a telephone conversation with the Iranian foreign minister. It wasn't as if when they had that meeting between the prime minister and the Iranian foreign minister, I don't think there was any inkling on the foreign minister's side that they're going to attack Pakistan in the next few hours. Otherwise, that meeting would not have been as cordial. So therefore, I think that this was a total miscalculation on their part. And I think that is why, because the Iranian political system from within is facing so much pressure internally, as well as externally, of course, because of Gaza, because of the fact that Hamas is there, and Hamas is totally supported by Iran. So this was having a lot of pressure on them. And I think this immense pressure led them to carry out a huge miscalculation in firing on Pakistani territory, which is something that has never happened before. Of course, we did the right thing. We had no choice but to answer back. And now I think that things are going to move forward. I think the Iranians realized they could also have miscalculated, in a sense, that the Iranians may have thought that, well, we are not India. And in the past, when such attacks have taken place, Pakistan has never responded militarily. And whereas we would respond to India, because India is a different ball game, it's our enemy state. But with Iran, because we have good relations, they said, well, even if we do carry out this kind of a missile attack against Pakistan, Pakistan would not respond because we are not India, and Pakistan has never done it before. And that's why it was a good thing that our military forces did respond, because it was sending a message to Iran that, look, okay, you are our friend, but when you decide to violate our sovereignty in this way and kill innocent civilians on our side, then we have no choice but to respond to you militarily as well. So that was a good message that we sent out. And secondly, the Iranians may have thought at some point that, well, Pakistan is going through its own political issues and political instability, and therefore they may be too involved in that, and this might just go unnoticed, which was another miscalculation on the Iranian side. So I think it was a combination of all of this, but I think mainly the fault lies within the Iranian political system itself, which is fractured, as far as I'm concerned, which is fractured to a large extent. And of course, we can discuss that later. And that has led to this huge miscalculation that took place from them. But now I think things are settling down, and I'm hopeful that with the new mechanisms that have been put in place with the recent visit by the Iranian foreign minister, we should be able to move into a new era of cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Riffat. Syed Muhammad Ali Saab, Ambassador Riffat has quite rightly pointed out that things have been moving in the positive trajectory, and it was a sort of a miscalculation on the behalf of Iranians. But when we try to understand Iran and Iranian foreign policy, we are basically told that Iran follows a very pragmatic approach. Yes, it is a religious bounded country. It is sort of a theocratic republic. But when it comes to Iranian interest, Iran basically follows the pragmatic approach. So how do you see such sort of an attempt onto the Pakistan sovereignty when the Gaza war has been going on and Iran has basically invoked the anger from all across its region, from Syria, from Iraq, now Pakistan as well. And when the situation of Gaza and the Red Sea has been quite tense, the blame of which has been going on to the Iranian role in these conflicts. How do you see all these developments?
Thank you so much, Mr. Faraz. First off, let me thank IRS, Ambassador. Timely event, and I think it is a humbling opportunity to speak after Ambassador Riffat Masood, who perhaps hasn't left much to analyze, but let me structure and build further from where she has left. But it was fascinating because I think most of her analysis and findings were almost identical. So what I'll do is in the next 15 minutes, I'll try to structure it in a conceptual and independent perspective. First off, I think if we look at the nature of Pak-Iran relations, I think it would not be incorrect to sort of categorize these bilateral relations in three stages. First, before the creation of Pakistan, the social, cultural, historic, linguistic relations are thousands of years old. But after the creation of Pakistan, I think as a Pakistani, it is important for me to recognize that Iran was the first state which recognized Pakistan as an independent country. And since that was the Cold War era, we both were allies of the US in the Cold War. So we enjoyed very cordial relations, not just in the economic, military, and diplomatic realms, but also in social relations as well. If I do not need to identify the individuals, but during 1950s and 60s, some of the political leaders of Pakistan had close family relations with Iran as well. So that indicates how close our relations were, both with each other, but also with the same great power, which was the US. But as Ambassador Riffat also pointed out, we come to the third stage after 1979, and there are three things which happened, which and the first stress was obviously at the domestic level. Iran underwent a profound ideological and political transformation, and which had implications around the world, not just in this region. Secondly, its transformation, and its foreign policy was more perhaps ideologically inspired, and which also had its implications in the region. Third reason was the start of the jihad campaign against the Soviet forces in Afghanistan, while Pakistan and the Arab world were supporting them with the US good offices. Iran obviously had a different view towards that. And after that, we come to the 9/11 episode. And in the last 23 years, we have seen a contrasting relationship between Tehran and Kabul from what Islamabad has had with Kabul. So I basically identify these three factors which have collectively put significant pressures on the nature, extent, Pakistan and Iran. So that is the framework in which I'm going to talk about. Secondly, let me come specifically to the military dimension of Pakistan-Iran relations. I think during the Cold War, Pakistan and Iran military forces, both Army, Air Force, and Navy, enjoyed very close relations. We also enjoyed significant military assistance during 65 war. But obviously things changed significantly after 1979. However, let me identify that high-level exchange visits continue to take place even today between Iran and Pakistan. Secondly, I think in terms of training, military training, I myself have taught at National Defense University and Air War College, and I recognize some senior Iranian military officers continue to in different military institutions. And thirdly, we also frequently hold joint exercises at the bilateral and multilateral level on various occasions. So I identify these three levels of military cooperation continues even to date, despite significant changes in the transformation of world order and geopolitics in the region. Now, let me come in the third part, let me come specifically to the crisis which unfolded on 16th January 2024. I think as a student, it is a matter of great fascination for me to see very carefully managed this crisis, very responsibly, very carefully, and the interplay and synergy between the strategic decision-making level, between civil military leadership, at the diplomatic level, the information prong and the military prong, all sort of galvanize themselves in a very flawless expression of responsible very intense days of crisis. And but let me briefly identify that the Pakistani behavior was very responsible, very lawful, very careful, and very calculated. If you look at the diplomatic effort, as Ambassador Riffat Masood already identified, it was particularly shocking for Pakistan, not just by virtue of the cordial bilateral relations, but also because on the same day of Iranian attack earlier, the Irani foreign minister had called on to our interim prime minister, and there was a visit by the Iranian envoy for Afghanistan, who also called on to our interim foreign minister. And to know that within a few hours of that, Pakistan will be on the receiving end of a unprovoked missile attack from Iran was completely sort of unthinkable. So, however, on the second day, Pakistan uh, sort of engaged Iran at the diplomatic level as a very responsible part, because like any peace-loving country, Pakistan expected some logical explanation from the Iranian side that what has caused them to violate Pakistan's sovereignty and territorial integrity in such a blatant and unprovoked manner. But it seems that unfortunately, on the second day, which is the 17th January, adequate or timely response perhaps was not received by Islamabad from Tehran, which forced Pakistan to decide at the highest level a very calculated, lawful use of force in a manner that it demonstrated that our target was not an Iranian government, Iranian official, Iranian military, IRGC, or even an Iranian citizen. That's why it must be highlighted. The name given to that operation, Margbar Saramchar, itself signified that it was a strategic signal to the Iranian leadership that our target is not Iran. It is in Persian, literally means an attack on the insurgents. So we expected Iran to appreciate our distinction in terms of the lawful use of force against Pakistani owned insurgents rather than any Iranian citizen or official or military personnel. So as a result of that, thankfully, as a result, Iranian reaction from their foreign office was also quite astute and careful. But I must recognize that it identified that those who have been killed as a result of Pakistani retaliation were non-Iranians, which mean that they also appreciated the fact that Pakistan's selection of target and use of force was extremely surgical, precise, with no collateral damage, and it was a very good expression of discriminatory use of force under Geneva Convention in exercise of our right of self-defense. And after that, the behavior was quite different. Thankfully, sanity prevailed, and we witnessed the Iranian side willing to de-escalate crisis. And let me also appreciate, uh, although the major contribution must be given to our Foreign Office, our very astute and capable diplomats on this very effective and timely crisis diplomacy at the bilateral level. However, there were some attempts from China, Turkey, and other friendly countries who also expressed concern at this unexpected crisis and urged both sides to exercise restraint and caution. And things, thankfully, de-escalated within a very short span of time. Now, very quickly coming to the last part of my talk, which is the perhaps the most important and interesting. What are the lessons from this crisis that both Pakistan and Iran and international community and think tanks and academia can draw? I think one as a very important to appreciate that if you compare Pakistan's strategic behavior with any previous crisis, such as the Operation Swift Retort, you would instantly recognize that Pakistan's use of hard power has not only improved uh, immensely in terms of its capabilities, it has also used it very carefully, very tactfully, very surgically, very precisely, and very lawfully as well. It has not used force in an indiscriminate manner, but it has used force to restore peace and stability in this region. So that is a very useful expression and evidence of Pakistan's international image as a responsible nuclear power, unlike our eastern neighbor, which has a hegemonic interventionist policy towards not just Pakistan, but so many other countries like the US, like Canada, and others. Pakistan believes that, and that is a reflection of our strategic character as well, that we have confidence in our hard power and we can use our hard power in a very precise, calculated, and swift manner whenever need be. But we believe that hard power should only be used to maintain stability and security in the region, but not to promote any hegemonic designs or destabilize the region, as we unfortunately have seen so many times from our eastern neighbor. That is the first lesson. I think the second lesson, although there is not much debate within Pakistan so far, but I believe in the months, weeks, and years to come, a lot of research and academic work will be undertaken on these three eventful days, because, as I earlier pointed out, Pakistan's very flawless synergy of different elements of national power and different institutions, ranging from Foreign Office to GHQ to Joint Staff Headquarters to Air Headquarters to Ministry of Information, was very flawless and efficient. And I think it's a textbook study of how to blend different elements of national power in pursuit of regional stability and national security. So I expect, I think the international community is also very impressed, although they like Mr. Riffat Masood rightly pointed out, the Iranian unprovoked aggression was really shocking for Pakistan, but also for the international community as well. But Pakistan's response and quick, timely, and crisis diplomacy and de-escalation was equally impressive, which proved that Pakistan's diplomacy is very effective, and it works very closely with other institutions and commands huge respect and trust from other countries, particularly Iran as well, which allowed Pakistan's foreign minister to invite his counterpart who visited Pakistan, and which led to sort of resumption of normal ties, return of the envoys to both Tehran and Islamabad. And I think both countries now look forward to moving on from this unfortunate episode in the bilateral relations. But I think there are three things which I want to highlight, which are also provide useful opportunities to both Tehran and Pakistan to learn from this episode. Number one, if you look at the reactions and responses from the international community during this crisis, I think my friends in Tehran must notice that which are the countries and which are the commentators which wanted to deepen this crisis and prolong this crisis, while which were the countries and friends which were trying to help us diffuse this crisis and manage it in a timely and amicable and responsible manner. And I'm sure you also would recognize that several, but not only the Indian Ministry of External Affairs statements were not helpful, but most of their media, think tanks, and strategic experts were celebrating after the Iranian attack, but went quiet after Pakistan's response because they were disappointed that the crisis did not linger as much as they would want or like. So this proves that India, wants to benefit from harming our bilateral close relations, and that is something that my friends in the power circles, in academia, in think tanks, and political leadership must also recognize that whenever there is a problem between Tehran and Islamabad, it is India which wants to exploit it for its own geopolitical interests. And after this costly episode, we must see that who are the spoilers, who are helping the non-state actors, the terrorists and insurgents, which pose a common threat to both the security, stability, and prosperity and progress of Iran and Pakistani nations. So I hope Pakistani people, the Iranian nation and leadership would also recognize that harboring any non-state actors which have any ill intentions towards Pakistan and vice versa is not helpful for cordial relations, but also pose challenges to the stability, security, and prosperity of this region, and their space, and denying them space within our territory is a common interest, so that both nobody spoils the close brotherly historic relations between both countries, and we both benefit from the immense regional connectivity and other projects which are emerging, and so that we both can benefit from them timely in a manner that both our nations can improve our economic prosperity. I think there are two more opportunities which have emerged after this episode. One is that only early in the morning, I was talking on an international channel about a recent UN Security Council report that Al Qaeda has again resurfaced and sort of established itself in Afghanistan. So I think if Pakistan and Tehran learn from this crisis and identify and agree on countering terrorism in all its forms and manifestations together through intelligence cooperation, through counterterrorism efforts, then I think there are opportunities, but also common challenges which are emerging in this region, which require both Tehran and Islamabad, a collective, considered, and common approach towards eradicating terrorism in all its forms and manifestation from this region. Lastly, I would say that the announcement that there will be liaison officers posted by both Islamabad and Tehran in each other's countries to better facilitate intelligence cooperation and security cooperation, I think is a welcome initiative. And I hope that this will help reduce the misperceptions and allow both countries to remain in contact and coordinate our operations, intelligence sharing, and information sharing at different levels. But it is very important that both countries from now on not only move beyond this unfortunate episode of 16th January, efforts which allows Pakistan to build trust and not just goodwill with Tehran. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ali. It was indeed quite a comprehensive overview and recommendations on your part. Ambassador Riffat, as Mr. Ali has pointed out that the crisis did not linger on because of the responsible diplomacy and impressive de-escalatory actions on both the on the behalf of both the parties, as well as the role of the friendly states like Turkey and China that have managed to manage the crisis. I want to ask you that although the crisis have been resolved for the time being, but there have been a trust deficit that have prevailed or that have emerged in the bilateral conduct. So what steps should now be taken to resolve that trust deficit? And uh, could this become a new normal that violating the territory or sovereignty of Pakistan on the behalf of Iran, because such a attempt was never happened. So is there a chance that this could become a new normal? And if yes, so what steps should be taken to avoid that?
Well, I think there has been a realization on both sides of the vulnerabilities and the dangers that exist in our region and the negative role which Dr. Sabis, also Dr. Ali has pointed out, of third countries is in trying to destabilize this region. I think it is something which has hit home to Iran more so than us, because we have been talking about this with Iran for a while, that while they talk about extra regional forces which are trying to destabilize the region, we have referred to forces within the region which are trying to destabilize our relationship. So I think this incident, this unfortunate incident, has actually brought home stark realities which exist in our region for both countries. And they are both internal as well as external realities. Internal realities in the sense that, as I mentioned to you, Iran is facing deep political divisions and crises at home due to its economic situation. This points out to the fact that Sistan, Balochistan, where most of these activities take place from, is one of the poorest regions of Iran. It is also a region which is consists of the Sunni majority people, and Iran is a Shia majority country, so there is a sense of political alienation in Sistan, Balochistan, a sense of deprivation over there. So when you have this kind of a vacuum in a region, in a country, in an area, then of course miscreants, and terrorists can take advantage of that. Similarly for us, internally, I think it is something to which our government, our state should wake up to, the fact that we have, I feel, left Balochistan neglected for a very, very long time. If you travel to Balochistan, I'm sure you've had the opportunity, and I had the opportunity when I was in Iran to travel to Balochistan. It's really very unfortunate that the level of development is, although we are also a poor country, but the level of development in Punjab or KPK or Sindh, Balochistan is totally different to that. And, I think that the governments have to focus on that, so that the internal alienation, political alienation that is felt by people and the economic deprivation that they're feeling, that should be handled, and it should actually be addressed. So that, my thesis, my stake always has been that when you leave a vacuum in any place, then, the forces, your enemy forces, will want to exploit that vacuum and try to take over. Thirdly, I think externally, it is a reminder to both countries that there are external forces at play. And the only way to overcome the negative impact of these external forces is through cooperation. As I mentioned to you earlier, mechanisms were already in place on the border. When I was the ambassador there, we had worked out some fresh mechanisms. The border fencing had started between the two countries. And there was a constant exchange of intelligence information. There was a constant dialogue taking place between the border security forces of both countries, the DGs of the both countries. There was a hotline between them. Now, of course, after this incident, The mechanisms have, the political mechanisms have come into place, such as the foreign minister level hotline has been established and so forth. So this is all very good. This is all very, very useful, of course, because there's no doubt that this is an unstable border. This is a border which is exploited by external forces to create more instability. But I think what is more important is for these two countries, both our countries, to realize that this cannot continue. As I said to you earlier, the 1979 was the time when the Americans and the European powers and even some countries in the Gulf were wanting to destabilize the regime in Iran, and they were, unfortunately, many of them were using Pakistan, and we went through the proxy war period, and that's all history that you all know. So this border has always been very, very fragile. So I think mechanisms have to not only be put into place for security, but mechanisms have also to be put into place which would encourage more economic activity, more people-to-people contact, so that, there is a sense of ownership. There is a sense of a feeling of cooperation, a feeling of friendliness between the two countries. So therefore, it's very, very unfortunate that this incident happened. Don't forget that the past 2 years, we have been moving in that direction. Pakistan and Iran both were moving towards a direction in which we were establishing more border markets. There was more economic activity being generated across the borders. There was more exchange of people coming and going. So because we thought that this is the best way, once you have economic stakes are in place, then of course political and security stakes come into play as well. And if you recall, I don't know, in one of my earlier talks, when this Saudi Arabia rapprochement started, and I was asked several times about this question, that, well, is it going to help Pakistan? And I said, yes. The reason why it will help Pakistan is because, we have two countries with whom Pakistan has a very close relationship. But those two countries don't get along with each other. And we would always face a very difficult situation in Pakistan on how to balance our relationship between these two countries. And we did it. We did it very well. I think Pakistan played a very good role in keeping that balance between Saudi Arabia and Iran. But the fact that when these two countries started talking to each other and they entered into an agreement for cooperation, I had at that time also mentioned that there would be spoilers at play, because it does not suit certain powers. Dr. Ali pointed to one particular power, which is India, but I think Israel, the United States are two major powers who want instability in this region and are working actively to keep instability in this region. So, I said there would be spoilers at play to undermine this agreement. And the fact that if Pakistan is benefiting from this agreement, they will try to undermine it. And that was, of course, proven when this January attack took place, that none of these countries, whether it's India, whether it's the United States, whether it is Israel, want any kind of stability. Now, this is one thing I think that when these two foreign ministers met just recently, they must have discussed it. They must have said, look, why now? Why now? First of all, Iran made a mistake of attacking Pakistan at a time when the Middle East is already on fire. So that was bad timing, number one. But number two, the fact that, we have now brought about this unfriendly and mistrust and anger from both sides. Well, we are basically playing into the hands of the terrorists. We're playing into the hands of those forces who want to create instability. And one of those forces, one is, of course, our next door neighbor, India, but then also Israel also benefits from the fact that Pakistan and Iran don't get along, that there is there are some tensions on our border. So therefore, these two countries must now realize that this kind of situation cannot prevail. We have this border which has seen many, many incidents. And I mean, if we go through the list, there are many of them. Every year, every 6 months, something other happens on the border. It would be restricted to the border itself. Mind you, it would be restricted to just the security forces along the border, but still, there would be some attacks. Now, I think these two countries, when the foreign ministers met this time, and there must be a realization on both sides that we cannot let this continue, and we must bring into play those mechanisms. We must bring into play a feeling of cooperation, collaboration, so that, you know, we do not allow extra regional forces or forces within the region who want to destabilize us to succeed. Because it is not to our benefit, it is not to Iran's benefit, and particularly now when we have a situation in Gaza, it is certainly going to be harmful for the entire region. I think that is one major lesson. If I was still there, and this is a lesson that I would take away, and I would drum home that, look, this kind of instability has to now stop, and we have to move forward.
Quite right, Ambassador Riffat. Dr. Ali, Ambassador Riffat has pointed out on three very important factors. Number one, that the incident was occurred at the time when the border markets were being established. That was a step ahead in the bilateral trade. In your opinion, what would be your analysis on the impact of these attacks on the bilateral trade between the two? My second question is that, as we are all aware, that apart from India, there are also some other spoilers as well, as pointed out by Ambassador Ifat. So how do you see the role of those spoilers and both states and non-state actors? Because do you think that such an incident would embolden the non-state actors that have been present on the both sides of the border and having taking advantage because of the porous border? So how do you see that such a scenario would impact the internal security dimensions of both Pakistan and Iran in terms of bilateral trade and in terms of security, because Pakistan has been quite vulnerable to the sectarian conflict as well because of the ethno religious affiliations? So how do you see the consequences or future impact of these developments onto the bilateral trade and the security situation of both the states?
Thank you, Faraz. I think I'll briefly answer your questions, which gives me an opportunity to add a few points which I had, missed. Number one, I think coming to the border trade, I think it is very important that this escalation or crisis was managed at the foreign minister level timely and successfully, which reflects that sanity the crisis. And I think, let me highlight, it also made both Islamabad and Tehran realize that any further escalation or lingering of this crisis would give more opportunity and space to the spoilers to further harm these bilateral relations, which would subsequently require much more effort and political capital to repair it. So I think this timely, astute diplomacy and wisdom needs to be recognized and appreciated, number one. And the evidence of that is, when the Irani foreign minister visited Islamabad at the invitation of Pakistani foreign minister, if you look at the joint statement and also the press statement given by Pakistan's foreign office, there is a emphasis that these border markets would be operationalized and they would continue and they would be expanded, which means and actually proves that the economic growth in the bilateral relation is one common interest between Pakistan and Iran, which both sides value and continue to deepen and expand, which is very good, and which indirectly also will hopefully to some extent address the concern which Ambassador Riffat highlighted, because the people living on both sides of the border are quite poor, and since our current interim prime minister also comes from Balochistan, he has repeatedly also mentioned that some alternative opportunities should be given to these people living in the bordering areas so that they can improve their quality of life. So I think these border markets are very important in a strategic context as well, to provide lawful, peaceful economic means to the poor people on both sides of the border, which disincentivizes criminal activities, smuggling, and sponsoring any non-state actor in a non-kinetic manner. So that is very important. Secondly, I think one more point I want to highlight, which I think is very important. Although this calculated, lawful, surgical retaliation by Pakistan was carried out in a very calculated manner against Baloch insurgents inside Irani territory, I'm sure its precision, its speed, its depth, and its immaculate planning will be recognized and appreciated not just by other countries in the region, but at the world stage as well. Let me recall, uh, I think it was 2022, March 2022, when there was a missile incident and an Indian missile ended up in Muridke in Pakistan, and there was a serious high-level concern in Pakistan that about the motivation and the command and control of India. But it was recognized that if it had hit uh, any target in a manner which could have caused some damage or caused some loss of life, let me assure you, I was myself part of a very timely track 1.5 with a very senior level Indian military officer, and I was asked to convey this message that had any loss of life occurred, then Pakistan would have responded definitely, but in a different manner. So what this message, this crisis with Iran also signals to all the other countries who might have any ill intentions towards Pakistan, that Pakistan is a peace-loving and responsible nuclear power, and but it values the life of its citizens. It values its sovereignty, territorial integrity, and national security as sacrosanct, and in something which it is not willing to compromise upon. And anybody who wants to harm it from any side in any manner or any domain will be given a befitting response. That's Pakistan's strategy and policy, which I think was demonstrated through this calculated action. And I'm sure its speed and precision will be recognized and appreciated in New Delhi as well. That is the second message. The third message is that I think, although Ambassador Riffat also referred to it, but let me highlight it deeply, that it was very unfortunate that the unprovoked aggression from Iran on 16th January came at a time when our Palestinian brothers and sisters expected the entire Muslim world to stand behind them and support them politically, diplomatically, legally, and morally. And this unfortunate crisis wouldn't have helped the cause of the Palestinians. That is the third aspect. The fourth aspect is that let me recognize that Iran, as Ambassador Riffat also pointed out, enjoys an immense degree of respect and goodwill, and if I can use an academic term, soft power within Pakistan as well. And I think this was an irresponsible waste of Iranian goodwill and soft power through this crisis, which will, I think, which is unfortunate. And I'm sure with caution and astute diplomacy, we will move on. But this will mark a waste of Iranian soft power towards a nation which has good wishes towards the Iranian nation. And so that is something which also affects how Pakistani society behaved. And that brings me to the last point of my response, that although it is not noticed, but I think it was a very welcome sign that despite an environment of polarized and charged uh, politics leading up to the upcoming elections. During crisis, leaders of all political parties joined hands and offered their unequivocal, unconditional support for Pakistan's sovereignty, territorial integrity, and standing by our armed forces. So that also is a very welcome sign that despite our political and economic differences, and we are a vibrant nation, we are, we have a very emotional perspective towards politics, but when it comes to any foreign aggression against us, that really galvanizes the nation, that unites all institutions, and we sort of move beyond and rise beyond our political differences and support our armed forces. And that is also a message to those who do not have who do not have peaceful intentions towards Pakistan, that anybody who attempts to attack Pakistan must see that the Pakistani nation perhaps rises to the occasion, and that actually brings out the best in us.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ali. We are just about to conclude. Before conclusion, I just want to ask both of you a question, and I want your response in just a brief one-liner answer. That since we all know that such incident occurred because of the situation of Balochistan and Pakistan side and Sistan at the Iranian side. So, what steps should both Pakistan and Iran take mutually to address the issues of the people and other factors that are residing inside Pakistani side of Balochistan and Iranian side of Sistan? Just one liner recommendation from both of you. First from Ambassador Riffat Saiba.
Yes, well, a one-liner would be that we should, both countries should ensure that this border returns to being a border of peace and friendship, which was meant to be, and that we have more economic activity taking place on this border. Because once you have economic activity, once economic stakes are there, then you will find very little space for the miscreants, for the terrorists to play a role in bringing about trouble on this border. At the same time, I think that there has to be active involvement, both countries internally, in making sure that their respective provinces, which border the two countries, are also given the kind of rights, both economic, social, and political rights, which they are giving to the rest of the provinces. I think that is the bottom line, that it is a two-in-one situation. Internally, we have to address our issues, and externally, we have to make sure that geoeconomics, which will go side by side with geopolitics and stability, work to make this border a more vibrant border of peace and stability.
Your take on the same question, Dr. Just one line.
My brief response would be that I completely agree with with Ambassador Riffat, that I think developing the border economy in a peaceful, monitored, regulated, and managed manner will not only incentivize peaceful, responsible, lawful behavior of those people, disincentivize criminal and terrorist space. And secondly, I think this episode, this crisis, yielded a very valuable and costly lesson that terrorism is a common threat. So in order to, instead of unilaterally fighting and violating each other's territorial integrity and sovereignty, it is better that we both are on the same side. We have a common interest of a stable, secure, and prosperous region, which requires a considered collective approach towards the common threat of not just Baloch insurgents, but I think the re-emergence of terrorist outfits in Afghanistan, I'm sure, is a common concern which requires a well-considered and collective approach. That's the second aspect. Third, I think we should continue to have multi-dimensional, multi-domain, diversified relations with Iran beyond just at the state level. I think which will improve our goodwill and reduce the misperceptions that our adversaries attempt to sow and exploit. And lastly, I think my again underlining the message to my friends in Iran that they must not forget that who were celebrating this crisis and why, and who went quiet when we successfully and wisely diffused this crisis. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Riffat Masood and Dr. Syed Muhammad Ali, for sparing time and discuss on this issue and enlightening us on the recommendations as well as the comprehensive analysis of all the incidents that have taken place. I, on the behalf of the Institute and President Ambassador Nadeem Rayaz, I thank you and appreciate that you both could manage time, and hopefully this series of event would continue. And I would just like to give the floor to Ambassador Nadeem Rayaz for the vote of thanks.
Assalamu alaikum. It was really a pleasure listening to Dr. Muhammad Ali and Ambassador Riffat Masood. Thank you very much for enlightening us. You know, it's a very important issue. And I think the more we get to know about it, the better it is. For us, in fact, I would request you to organize a follow-up of this thing, because I was looking that in the chat box, there are a number of questions which we actually need to answer, but due to the paucity of time, I think we will need to organize a follow-up session of this thing. Thank you once again, Ambassador Riffat Masood and Muhammad Ali, for being with us. It was really, really enlightening to listen to your line of argument. And inshallah, next time I will also join and give you my line of argument, which may be slightly different from yours. Okay. All the best. Allah Hafiz.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. It was an honor, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ali and Ambassador Masood. See you next time, inshallah. Thank you.